Oh, so much stuff happened to Donald Trump this week. It was such a good week for him. Do you think Donald Trump thought this is a great week for me?
I do.
He probably did. He was on TV a lot.
And he's number 2 in the polls now.
He's number 2 in the polls. So he got fired by Macy's. He got Univision dropped broadcasting the Miss Universe contest. He was fired as the host of Celebrity Apprentice, although I guess he still owns some of it. And it all sort of originally stems from derogatory comments he made about Mexican immigrants.
Really disgusting comments.
Saying, that the Mexico was sending its rapists, killers, and drug dealers to America. That's who was coming. But as you say, Matt, his poll numbers are up. Why did this get him in trouble? I mean, he's been saying appalling things for a long time. He was the birther in chief, for God's sakes. Why would this particular set of nasty, racist things that he said be the ones that lose him his TV shows?
I mean, I think that all Mexican immigrants are a less acceptable target than President Obama, even if he was saying outrageous things before about Obama. But truthfully, I am discussing this under protest. I hate that Trump ends up getting airtime. I know it's a fun topic, but I can't answer your question because I am too high-minded. I am too high-minded to follow the racism and general vile expletives coming out of Donald Trump's mouth.
All right, Matt, you and I can have this conversation. Why has it helped him? Why has it helped him, do you think?
Well, I think it's sort of two sides of the same coin, though. I think you see with Trump losing these contracts with TV networks, I think you see with the turning against the Confederate flag recently that sort of the weight of purchasing power and public sentiment in the United States is shifting in a more, sort of anti-racist direction.
Don't you think social media must
I thought you weren't talking.
I didn't say that.
Social media, absolutely.
Well, just that the businesses can see how outraged people are and then respond to it much more. There's a lot more sensitivity.
And also, I mean, I don't think you hear about this a lot, but studies I've seen show that blacks and Latinos use Twitter disproportionately compared to white people.
True.
So social media actually amplifies minority voices louder than you would ordinarily expect. And so brands and politicians have become a little bit more aware of what's being said in those communities. At the same time, I mean, I do think you have a lot of people in the United States who subscribe to a sort of, traditional backlash sort of view. And the more Trump gets in trouble for pushing the envelope and, quote unquote, speaking the real truth, like some people rally around him and say,
well, it's not just some people. I mean, his views are not totally discordant with the views of most Republicans.
No, that's not true.
Most Republicans have very, very, very anti-immigrant sentiment.
I don't think that they have racist anti-immigrant sentiment.
Meh.
Oh, yeah. Come on. Don't you think? I mean, I feel like Trump is a measure of the percentage of the country that is truly out there on the right in a conspiracy-minded, ugly way. And I don't want to think that is most of the Republicans. I don't want to think
it's not most of it, but it's,
You just said most Republicans.
I think most Republicans have very dim views about immigration. Yes.
But there are different ways to have dim views of immigration.
And he is
one way.
He's
and
at
let's
a farther
hope
end of it.
there are not that many. I mean, look, his rising support in the polls suggests, but still, it's a fraction of a fraction that we're talking about.
Right.
Here.
It's not most people. But it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of Republicans. And I think, not that many people believe that Mexico is literally sending all of its murderers and rapists to the United States. But I think
Can we just stop to say that there are very few immigrants who come here and commit truly serious violent crimes? That has been a problem for the Obama administration, which would like to be only deporting seriously violent criminals, or at least prioritizing that, and there just are not very many of them. Yes, sorry, just had to get that off my chest.
But I do think a lot of people, I think there's a widely held view, and it's, I think, very wrong-headed, but I think a widely held view that a big social problem in America is that white people are excessively censored in speaking the truth about racial and ethnic minorities. I think that's something a lot of people think, that quote-unquote political correctness is out of control and it's a huge problem, and that people like Donald Trump who, quote unquote, speak the truth.
Right.
That this is this is important.
And then the more the liberals condemn him, the more clear it is that we should stand up, or at least
that there's this media elite that is, silencing people, and that Trump, at least through his vast real estate wealth, can't be silenced, and that's admirable.
Don't you feel, though, that if Donald Trump is your version of speaking the truth, both in the substance, the ridiculous substance of what he says, and also just the buffoon that he is. Like, you're in big trouble if that's where speaking truth to power gets you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of old racist crank group of Americans is not in great shape at the moment, but...
So if you're Jeb Bush, you are loving this because this is just pounding down everybody who... So Trump's doing well, but it's pounding down all the sort of second-tier candidates who now cannot get a hearing.
For someone like Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, a Jindal, a Rubio, a Walker, who suddenly have much less of a platform.
And also, they can't afford to put the same daylight between themselves and Trump, but they also don't. He's like radioactive in some ways too, right?
It's Walker, I think, who really Walker is the governor of a real state. He's been elected 3 times in Wisconsin. He's like a super credible. He could really be a presidential nominee. He could win. He is genuinely more conservative than Jeb Bush, but he's a little boring. So anytime someone with more razzmatazz, like Trump, gets in the headlines, it helps Jeb because it prevents Scott Walker from saying, hey, guys, if you want like a real electable, respectable candidate who is more conservative than Jeb Bush, I'm right here.
So if you're a Rubio or Walker and you're having this problem, they seem to be the two who are suffering the most from this. What do you do?
How do you wait for it to burn out? I mean, this is like, it cannot last as a sustained
So you can't you don't go after Trump. You don't bother to do that because that...
I mean, I wish they would, but I don't think they would have... I think it would be dangerous for them. A little dangerous, a strong, politically risky for them to go after him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to assume Trump will burn out and you got to keep just doing your own
What if
thing.
he doesn't?
Yeah, I don't know. Crazy times.
Well, that would shake things up in an interesting way.
I mean, it's a real shame because there is this... These Republican candidates are, I mean, I don't agree with anything they say, but they are smart.
And yet, who did you want to talk about this week? Donald Trump. It's a real shame, which we are now also
Which I'm
part
contributing
of.
to because Donald Trump is part of the,
Catnip.
he's making it the most interesting. He's saying the most interesting things. He's absorbing all the energy. I mean, tell me what you want to talk about Scott Walker. What is
what
it
did he
exactly
do this
that you
week?
want to say about Scott Walker?
Well, actually, Scott Walker called for a constitutional amendment that would allow states to ban gay marriage. And I was surprised he took that stance because if you think of him
Can we
as
talk
like...
about Trump now? What?
I think that constitutional amendment probably won't happen.
Really? You
Yeah.
think so?
I mean, that's a more ridiculous. That's
guy.
honestly a more ridiculous thing to say than that Mexico's sending a bunch of rapists over here, or that they're going to build a wall to keep out Mexicans. Honestly, that amendment is less relevant. It's less relevant to the actual political debate in this country than what Trump is saying.
I wanted to know why it was a politically astute thing for someone to say when he's trying to be the Koch brothers guy. Like, the Koch brothers cannot be excited about that. Is that just like, that's okay because that's the thing he's doing to show his right-wing bona fides?
Because it's cheap talk, right? I mean, he didn't promise anything that could possibly happen.
Okay.
But
Good answer.
So literally, what is going to? How will this? If the campaign turns out to be just Trump taking all this oxygen, like what kind of campaign are we going to have? We have 16 candidates out there. How are they going to? How are we going to decide? How are Republican voters going to form any opinion? What's going to happen if the conversation is all Trump? I don't get it.
I do think this is where, I've been on the sort of Iowa, New Hampshire bashing bandwagon for years, but where you do see a real virtue to it. These are small states. You don't need a ton of money to campaign in them. What you do need is to be like really patient about the annoying work of showing up in all kinds of diners all across Iowa.
State fairs. Don't forget the state fairs, Matt.
Absolutely. Scott Walker is going to do that. Like, he's a really serious politician.
You don't think Donald Trump
His
will be
life
out
is
there?
winning elections.
Well, this is good. So you're saying it's the retail work is going to make the difference. That because there's so many candidates and because like Trump is creating so much hot air, and there's not other kind of debate and discussion that's happening, that what the retail work is going to make the difference.
Yeah, that it's going to be able to let people get a chance to, connect to voters. And people know the difference, particularly people in these states where they see presidential candidates all the time. They know the difference between a real political contender and a guy with a television show,
Okay.
I think.
So two questions. One, is Trump actually going to run? Because he has to file papers and he's got to do financial disclosures.
Yes,
Will he actually
because
run?
he'll want to go to the debates.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think he will because he wants to go to the debates. So the debates, which are going to be, the debates are pretty soon, aren't they? He'll definitely be high enough in the polls. will Donald Trump be a candidate, after there have been after Iowa, New Hampshire?
I don't know.
No.
Plots?
I don't know.
Doesn't seem wild to me that he would be still up there in the top 10. How many people get to keep going after Iowa and New Hampshire? 5, 6, 10? I mean, when we've talked about this previously, I believe someone who knows more about this than me, you or John, has said, well, it's pretty cheap to keep it going, and, why not?
Yeah. Well, and for him, he could certainly keep it going.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right. If you're self-funded, why drop out? I guess he could get bored.
Yeah.
That just seems to be who can predict that? Because it's about his own fecklessness or seriousness.